Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you very much for spending this post-Thanksgiving time with me. To all those listening all over the world, all here on Periscope, happy Thanksgiving, or happy whatever you call it, if you call it something. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening to one more edition of Politics Done Right. Today we're going to get right into the meat of it. Terrorism. And that's what it is, folks. Terrorism is what we're seeing. For those users or those people who are watching on Periscope, I want to hear your words. So please type it in and I'll address you directly as well. Bring whatever you bring into the discussion here on air. For those who want to call in, please do remember that our call-in number is 646-929-2495. Again, that number is 646-929-2495. I would love to hear from you, folks. It's happened again. It is more frequent than before. You remember when it used to be that terrorist acts occurred every, 6 weeks or so? It is better. It is working at a clip of less than a month between domestic terrorist attacks, and that is what we must start calling it. For all of those of you who are listening out there, do not allow the narrative to be changed. Do not allow them to start to say, oh, this person was mentally disturbed. Do not allow them to say anything of that nature. Let's call it what it is. Let's move forward. That's the only way we're going to get things. I have a great second blog that I'm going to read from what a congressman came on to the Melissa Harris Perry show said. And he used one small paragraph to tie it all together. Terrorism, gun control, and a woman's right to choose. I love the way he did it. I'll read that a little bit later. But a right-wing domestic terrorist murdered a police officer and 2 civilians. He entered a Planned Parenthood, which what seemed like a AK-47. Think about it, an AK-47. While Americans have been showing, I'll be with you about that in a minute, my friend. While Americans have been showing an irrational fear for ISIS, it is evident that they should be more concerned with domestic terrorism. This is not new. Planned Parenthood has been victimized by domestic terrorists for decades, and sadly, it never, ever gets attention. It should. We will give it attention. We must give it attention. My folks there on Periscope, my folks that are listening on the phone, my folks that are listening over the internet, call in, chime in. The chat room is open as well. 646-929-2495. Again, that number is 646-929-2495. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Let's talk. I will also be following our hashtag Politics Done Right on Twitter, which is Egberto Willies is my handle. And you can give me a call again at this number, 646-929-2495. Please also remember, folks, it is very important that you have Periscope. Egberto Willies is my call on Periscope as well. And let me see you type. Let me see you use those fingers to tell me what you want me to get across into the ethosphere, if you will. And I will make sure to get that across. I will make sure to get that across. So, folks, it is just disconcerting to see what we have been seeing. So let's go right to it.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Titled, of course. Titled, of course. Police officer murdered in act of domestic terrorism at Planned Parenthood. I have the video for that correspondent blog as well at egbertowillies.com, or you can also see it at the Coffee Party USA site on Facebook. Domestic terrorism should be our main concern in America, subtitled. And yes, Bernie Frieder Sanders say terrorism is causing climate change. What? Think about that. I don't think Bernie quite said terrorism was causing climate change, but we'll talk about that afterwards, Mr. Periscope. We'll get on that, but let me get to the blog of the week. Once again, in a vicious act of domestic terrorism, a police officer and 2 civilians have been murdered. These events are occurring at a clip of more than once a month. The Guardian reports the following. A gunman has surrendered after an hours-long standoff inside a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, left 11 injured. Of course, it's more than that now. 1 police officer died from his wounds, the police union said on Twitter, but it was unclear whether there were any further fatalities. The Twitter that they sent out said, "It is with great sorrow," this from Colorado FOP, "It is with great sorrow that we must report that one of the officers shot today, the active shooter incident in Colorado Springs, has died, sadly has died. This office of Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman said, "My thoughts and prayers are with the families of victims on today's standoff in Colorado Springs. Tragic loss of life." You know, while both the traditional mainstream media and the right-wing media have been concentrating on Daesh, also known as ISIS, also known as ISIL, America has been living under a monthly barrage of mostly right-wing domestic terrorism acts. The fear Americans have shown for Daesh, a group of terrorists oceans and land masses away, it's irrational when compared to the lack of fear from homegrown American terrorists that have been inflicting a vicious killing at home right here in our backyard. Americans have been indoctrinated by our plutocracy via their puppets, the mainstream media and right-wing media, to believe terrorism is effected by a particular demographic. It does so for the purpose of justifying wars against the other, even as our domestic terrorists can enter any gun show and purchase weapons almost at will. Yes, Stupid Chopped. Why did you call yourself Stupid Chopped? Anyhow, you're correct. I think people, in fact, are, listen, that was from my Periscope listener or watcher. He is saying that people are listening, and he's so right. People are starting to listen today all over the news, even though yesterday they actually thought about not using the word terrorism. I saw MSNBC, then CNN, and all these others, of course not Fox News, starting to call it what it is, domestic terrorism. And you know what? It is just as lethal. It is just as lethal as any other terrorism that you're going to encounter. A dead person only knows one thing, or we only know one thing about a dead person, and that dead person is dead. We only know one thing about how a person inflicted by a terrorist act is dead, and that's what we've seen. In America, over the last few years, that is what we have seen. Yes, locally, homegrown terrorism has been much more dangerous than anything ISIS has done to us. And it's something that we better get out there, because you know what? It's going to get worse as the right-wing people lose control. As those folks on the right wing realize that the country is leaving their state of behindness, as we leave them behind for their arcane way of thought, their arcane thought process. Yes, Minneapolis terrorism. Imagine if Muslims shot up a Catholic pro-life rally, it would be huge. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I didn't get your call name. I'll try to get it the next time. You're absolutely correct. According to the Periscope user, think about how it would have been reported if this was a Christian, if this was a Muslim who shot up some other organization or something of that type. It would definitely have been a different story. I tell you what was surprising to me, and I'm going to go a little bit off topic because with what's going on with Black Lives Matter in Chicago and Minnesota, I wanted to bring this up. Here it is. These guys put the amount of time they put into this gunman, and this is disconcerting. A whole lot of time. He's arrested. He's arrested alive after killing a police officer. He used a gun, AK-47, dangerous man, killed a police officer, killed 2 civilians, hurt over 11 people. And somehow he comes out of it alive. A young 17-year-old black kid walking down the streets in Chicago with a knife, not an AK-47, which can kill you quickly, walks down the street, walking away from the cop, and 16 bullets are emptied into this man. There are several issues here. There's several issues here. There's a terrorism issue. There is the women's right issue. There is a gun control issue. And then there is the racial issue. Do you think unless you are one of those terrorists who definitely don't want to die but just want to inflict pain, if you know that the first way you're going to be attacked is with kid gloves, maybe you'll do your act because maybe you just want to make a name for yourself and you know you're going to come out alive. Do you think anybody else other than a white person can feel that? That just maybe they'll come out alive so that they can tell their story. Yes, they're going to be a martyr. Yes, they're going to be living in jail, but they'll be alive to tell their story. So there are a lot of that. This one incident in Colorado tells a lot about the state of American jurisprudence. It takes a lot about the state of American policing. It tells a lot about the state of America in general. What I want to, none of the mass shooters were people of color. You're correct. Now, I don't want. There's one thing I want to correct here because I don't want to racialize things too much because racializing things too much takes away from the tenet that I preach. And the tenet that I preach is that all people have the proclivity to do all the same things, good and bad. It has so happened that at this point in our history, terrorism, domestic terrorism, is mostly carried out by white folks who somehow feel threatened. I don't know threatened for what. I am lost, and my white listeners should make a comment here and tell me what it is that I am missing. But most of the folks out here in Kingwood, you're giving cover to, no, I'm not trying to give cover to white America at all. I am not doing that at all. I'm definitely not trying to do that, my friend on Periscope. What I try to do, no, I'm not, be careful. I'm not saying that it's not racial. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying there, and we have to parse this correctly. What I'm trying to say is simple. We have to be careful when we're talking about incidences that's done by a particular group. Let's say a set of crimes that are generally that so far in our current time is being affected by white people. I am not ignoring the elephant in the room at all. I am trying to give context. Right now, it is absolutely a fact that most of domestic terrorism is affected by right-wing white people. Okay, that's a fact. What I'm trying to say is the next time a black person commits some act of terrorism or some other bad act, I don't want that to be plastered on the black community, or the black community has to feel responsibility for that act, just like the white community will never accept responsibility for the act of that white terrorist as being a white thing. What I'm trying to do is at some time, what we must do is we must disassociate actions from race. And the reason we have to do that is if we're really going to become the country that we want to become. If we really are going, domestic terrorism will be the first time. Well, yeah. If we really want to become the country that we ought to become, that we want to become, that we claim that we are, we have to do that. And it's not going to be done via a tit for tat. In other words, it's not going to be done by us saying, you see, all domestic terrorists are white. Or all black folk who do X, Y, or black. No, we're not going to do that. In what I try to do with the activism that I do, with the politics that I push, I hear what you're saying. I hate to call your handle. I don't feel comfortable using your handle. I mean, I don't like it because I think you're a very smart person that you're putting a lot of smart little tidbits on the screen here. So I won't use your handle. But I really appreciate your call. I wish you'll change your handle, my friend. You know, I don't want, change your handle, buddy. Anyhow, folks, I want to read another blog post. Okay, I'll call you Chat. I'll call you Chat. Anyhow, what I want to read, folks, is another blog post here that I just put up this morning. And interesting enough, this blog post kind of scared me. You know why? As soon as I put it up, it got into 25,000 boxes in less than 5 minutes. I'm like, I was surprised that that blog post hit that fast and got so many thousand hits that fast. But you know what? That just means it's a subject that people are actually listening to. And as I'm speaking now, I'm trying to get to the blog post. It is up to 144,000 reach, 854 shares, and 3,274 likes. It's on the Coffee Party Facebook page. And before I go further, folks, please consider becoming a member of coffeepartyusa.com. Go to coffeepartyusa.com, become a member of our team. We are activists that are trying to get real news out there to surpass what's out there from the CBS ABC's misinformation machine. So we want to be as truthful as we can, and we also want to ensure that you are engaged. That's why we're doing these things on Periscope. That's why we're doing these things on Blog Talk Radio. That's why we're doing these things on radio stations like KPFT, etc. Folks, if you want to speak, please remember to push 1 so that I know that I need to call on you. But anyway, this is a blog post that I need to get out here now. It's titled, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries did not mince word as he assigned blame for this latest act of domestic terrorism. And here it goes. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of the 8th Congressional District in New York, did not mince words. He articulated something many of us have been saying for a long time. What he said about the domestic terrorist act on Planned Parenthood in Colorado Springs, Colorado, is significant and must be heeded. And here it goes. Hear what he says. We have to push forward, Hakeem Jeffries said, and it is going to be important to call terrorism terrorism, because what has happened is that we warped our public policy by failing to identify these acts of violence for what they really are. And this was an act of domestic terrorism. Now, we as members of Congress take an oath to protect the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And what we are seeing is these acts of enemy, or rather, let me back up. Now, we as members of Congress take an oath to protect the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And what we are seeing is that these acts of terrorism are being committed by American citizens, in particular instance at a Planned Parenthood site. I am certain with a political agenda fueled by the extremist rhetoric that we've seen from some on the Hill and from people all across the country as it relates to a woman's right to choose. And that is problematic. And one of the things that it warps is our ability to deal with fact. Why could this individual have an AK-47 weapon of mass destruction? There is no justification for it. He can't hunt deer with that. It's unnecessary. He is hunting human beings, and that's a key word. He is hunting human beings. And so I think if we want to directly get at the heart of the problem, what's fueling these things. Hopefully, as public policy makers, we can come up with an actual response. Now, and I say, that commentary was very smart and well structured. He used the incident to justifiably bring up three issues at the forefront of our current politics, and they are: he brought up the gun control issue, he brought up the women's right to choose issue, and he brought up domestic terrorism. Three things in a well-crafted little piece. Guns don't kill people. I see that Periscope. Now, he brought up a woman's right to choose. Now, here's the deal, folks. This one act by this domestic terrorist is a microcosm of what right-wing extremist rhetoric, attempted policies, and behaviors have effected. It is time for a change. It is time that America rid itself of those that are acting and coddling our homegrown terrorists. It is time for truth. It is time that we get busy. It is time for the truth. Now, what you think about that? Telephone number, folks. I'm not getting many calls. And I think I see my friend from San Antonio, but you don't have one pressed to tell me if you want to speak or not. Normally, there we go. John, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, good afternoon, Egberto. How you doing?
All right, how you doing, my friend?
Okay. Got in a little bit late, so I didn't hear everything that you said, but I can imagine what you were talking about. So I'll go ahead and start off with the definition of terrorism: the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce, especially for political purposes.
Right.
So I'm sure you were speaking a little bit about that. I'm not sure if you brought up the fact that I haven't seen any Republican presidential candidates condemn the act. I don't know if you've seen any.
No, I have not.
Too many.
John, I am. Listen.
Or too many.
I wrote, so far I've written 3 blogs on the issue. I wrote the blog immediately after it occurred. I wrote the blog with the response from Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood is taking it very cautious in the way they respond to it. And I wrote a blog this morning, the one that I just read that I told you that went viral, like as soon as I put it up there. And one of them, some messages that I got on some of my local ones is like, why are they so silent? Please tell me, John, why are they so silent?
Well, I mean, it's because they don't want to offend, the people. I mean, that's one of their major platforms. In fact, Marsha Blackburn is going to have meetings about Planned Parenthood, congressional meetings and oversight. And I'm sure they're going to try to condemn Planned Parenthood even more than they have already. Mm-hmm. And so this is part of their agenda. And the fact that, I'm sure you've seen things like on the recommended list about things like on Fox, on Daily Kos, about people who are like the comments that are all over Twitter. I mean, they're all over Twitter, and they're also all over like on a Fox News blog.
Right.
I mean, it's just disgusting. I mean, it is amazing how nasty things have gotten, I mean, to where we can't even condemn a killer. And, it's like, I mean, most of the people were saying, that the people who got killed deserved it because, they actually participated in Planned Parenthood. And so, I mean, it really is amazing with all the negative, fascistic rhetoric coming from Trump and other Republican candidates, including Ted Cruz, saying this week that he would that laws that didn't apply to his religion would not be enforced. I mean, that is,
it is
astounding.
And he's a constitutional lawyer, right?
I don't think he is. I think he's just a regular lawyer.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, still, I mean, it's just amazing that anybody would say that. I don't think anybody said anything that extreme,
well,
of any of the candidates in 2012.
I sit down and I swear, I ask myself if, first of all, I don't know what you think, but I think Trump still has a good chance of winning the nomination by fiat. But I could be wrong. But what you're telling me here is you are seeing a hardcore group of right wingers who there's also almost nothing evil that shakes them. Even this evil act, they can find some way to justify, even as they try to tell Americans to be very scared of those people that are ocean and land masses away from us. They should be very scared of those people. Welcome aboard, Christy Vivian. Welcome aboard Periscope. And I should have welcomed each one of you that came into Periscope before. Forgive me for not having done that. Yeah, but it is absolutely so. Welcome, Bula. Let's see, Bula Lauper 14. Welcome to the show as well. Yes, John. So it is. I find it amazing that there's nothing when it comes to terrorism done for right-wing purposes. There seemed to be nothing that these guys wouldn't do. But let me keep you hot and bring in 540. Stay hot with me, John. 540. Who do I have the honor of speaking with?
Hello?
Yes, you're on 540. Who are you?
Hey, this is Dan Cardwell. How are you doing? I'm in Hot Springs, Virginia.
Oh, great. Did you say Dan Caldwell? Did you say Dan Caldwell?
Dan,
Okay, how you doing, Dan?
Cardwell.
Come on in, Danny. Thank you for calling in.
Oh, no problem. I enjoy the show. I think one of the things that we have to actively do is point out the instances when those on the right and those vested interests in the cable media markets do everything in their power to avoid calling these acts terrorism when they're perpetrated by their acolytes, so to speak.
You're absolutely correct.
I mean, it's a natural defense mechanism, it seems, built into the same voices that are so quick to jump on any instance of civil disobedience coming from minority communities. These same voices, almost go mute when it comes to calling out, what we see in front of us. And so I enjoy the show, and I'm going to get off of here. Have a great day.
Look, Danny, thank you very much for calling, and I do appreciate your call. And to respond to what you're saying, I as well find that quite amazing, because these are the people. Welcome to the show, Anton Tanin. These are the same people who you would hear say they believe in the sanctity of life. They believe in the sanctity of life. But I mean, I tell you something about an ideology that scares me, and when an ideology is based on true principles. In other words, I don't have to agree with the principles. I don't have to. I can say a conservative who believe in small government, I am happy to have discussions with, and that is fine. A liberal who believes in large government, I mean, these are differences that have substance, and there are reasons why each person would want things of this nature. But when you have an ideology that has no principles, in other words, I believe in the sanctity of life, but at the same time, when it comes to capital punishment, I want him dead. When it comes to taking care of the kids that are born, or the kids that need help. Thank you for being on the call, my friend. And when it comes to actually talking to that person who needs help when they're alive and born, oh, we can't do that. And also, when it comes to war, who are the people that want the most war? Which I've been hearing so many preachers go on the pulpit asking that America go into Syria and bomb the whole hell out of these guys. He forgot what bombs land on. Doesn't land on just landmass and terrorists. It lands on terrorists, and it lands on people. But they don't have any problem with that. Killing. The ideology it's an inconsistent ideology that believes in just killing those who kind of not like us or don't think like us. John.
Yeah, I mean, going back, and this is also about torture. I mean, Trump saying that he's for torture, which is, I mean, it's so many Republican presidential candidates believe that. I mean, I don't understand it. It's a very, very sad time for America. I mean, I can't imagine a President Trump and how. I mean, this really, if that actually happened, it would definitely be the closest thing to a fascist, state that I've ever been in.
I can actually.
Nothing has ever been as close to that.
I tell you what, I can
it's
actually.
unbelievable.
I look, a country that elected, and I know a lot. When I wrote this stuff about Ronald Reagan, people remind me. They didn't really have to remind me because I already knew that Ronald Reagan was governor twice of the biggest state of the country. When I wrote a piece equating Ronald Reagan with Donald Trump, folks really didn't like it. Welcome aboard, Ruby Tublins. They really didn't like my comparison of Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan, but my idea was that they were both empty suits. And then I got responses like, well, do remember that Reagan ran the biggest state and he was elected twice. Yeah, but Reagan has always been was always puppeted. In other words, he always had somebody speaking for him. And if you doubt that, do remember that for the last couple years of his presidency, his Alzheimer's was very well pronounced, but he just had people always talking in his ears and telling him what to say and how to say it. And good old Nancy was right there to keep him informed. So there are a lot of these things that that I see a similarity. So my thing is, if we could have elected George Bush #2, if we could, and George Bush #1 was actually fine. I mean, a lot of people don't like him just because he's a Republican, but the reality is he's a pretty centrist kind of a guy, the daddy. But George W. Bush elected, Ronald Reagan elected. Yes, we could actually elect a Donald Trump. And you want to know what America would look like Donald Trump? You know what America would look like with a Donald Trump. Nothing, first of all, let's be clear. Nothing would get done. It would be a fascist state by fiat, but nothing will really get done. But worse is what happens to us internationally. Because at that point, we will not be considered a serious nation. And if you notice right now, the world is starting to decentralize away from America slowly. Now, anytime we have these terrorist acts, it kind of goes away because nobody has been dumb enough to build a military as powerful as ours. And given that our military is as big or as powerful as the next 8 or 10 of them, the next strongest one combined, yeah, we are in fact the preeminent power. But that's all we are. A whole bunch of guns ready to do things. As the rest of the world decentralized from, yes, you're right. My friend Ruby Tubins, his decline has started already. Yes, you're right. The decline of America has started. Now, interesting enough, the rest of the and this is what hurts America, and this goes into everything that we are talking about in the way things are, we misinform. Those of us, Trump's in decline. I'm not sure about that, Ruby. I'm not sure about that, but we'll see. I hope, but I don't know if it's Trump that's really in decline yet, because every time he declined a bit, he comes back with a vengeance, and he comes back a little bit higher. It's almost like, when you go on a diet, you lose some weight, but when you put the weight back on, it's actually more weight that you put on, and not only more weight, but more fat. Welcome aboard, Oscar del Cueto. Anyhow, going back to what I'm trying to say here is that if you take a look at what these other countries are doing around the world, and we don't do that here. We only listen to ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, etc. But I know, John, read other papers. I know you read The Guardian, but there are other papers to read, the Times Suisse and all these other, the Panama Critica and all these other papers around the world. You'll actually see that the rest of the world is going on without us. You'll see what China is doing in South America. You'll see what China is doing in Africa. You'll see what Brazil is doing throughout Latin America. You'll see all these other things happening that we know nothing about, and people forming alliances because we are so taken with who we are. As they get ahead, the rest of the world, the other 90% of the world, or 90-something percent, I don't remember what our population is. I think we're 3% of the population or something. But you think about that. Okay, what y'all on here line? I don't think we're line... first first class butler we're not. But anyhow, what happens is we are so misinformed. By the time the reality shows up, I hope it's not too late. Now here's the deal, John and others that are listening out there. Here's the reality. First class, that's what I really meant. Here's the reality out there. We can make a difference. And it's that thing I call one man, one vote. Right now, a lot of people don't think they have a reason to vote. You see these terrorist acts? You see all these crazy acts that are going down? We can mitigate all of this. It's very, very simple. Voting the right people in. Voting the right people in when they have the megaphones that are putting out there. What would be coming out of their megaphones would be quite a bit different than what we're seeing now. A narrative matters. A lot of these acts that are occurring, it's because they feel that they're being told to do these things. The right wing is, with their rhetoric, is telling people it's okay to be racist again. It is okay to take your country back. It is okay to be to forget that women have garnered many of their rights. You can stop terrorism. Terrorism is a tactic, not a tangible force. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's not a tangible force, and that's what we're going to do. Now, again, to do it, what it's going to take is for us to continue engagement. That's what we do here. When we have our little talks here, when we have our radio shows here, we're trying to engage more people to come. All of this has evolved from the Bundy compound last year. It's a lot deeper than the Bundy compound, but you're correct that the Bundy compound did have an influence. If you remember those folks with AK-47 and machine guns, looking at, they were fighting against the government. So I mean, all of that creates this narrative, this bad narrative that we're talking about. John, so what do you think is going to, I am curious, what do you think is going to be the outcome of this new incident in the next 5 days?
Oh, I probably not too much.
Does
really,
it go away?
To be honest with you. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just going to fade away just like all these shootings fade away. I mean, and, I don't really see much of a difference besides, maybe, like I was saying, the Marsha Blackburn hearings, they may be delayed a little bit, possibly. But besides that, that's about it. I do want to talk about a couple of things that I disagree with you slightly on.
Sure, go ahead, my
One
friend.
is, when you're talking about Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan obviously had a huge impact on the country.
Yes, he did.
For extremely is a negative force, in my opinion. But I mean, there are no doubt that he had more dog whistle effect with racism. Giving his speech, I believe it was in Philadelphia,
Mississippi, right?
And Right. I mean, that's what he had his kickoff for the 1980 campaign. And, but I mean, it wasn't near as overt, and it wasn't anything like Trump.
Right.
I mean, it really isn't. And so I think that's kind of, as bad as Reagan was, Reagan also had a practical side to him.
Right.
I mean, he would cut the tax rate, then he would raise it again. I mean, he raised taxes quite a bit, and so I mean, he has. I mean, overall, his influences, like I said, has a really negative impact. But I just really don't think that you can compare the two. And also, when you're talking about, nothing will happen when Trump. If Trump comes to office, and I think the odds are still overwhelming that he won't.
Right, I agree with you there. But he could. But I agree with you.
But I mean, if he does, I mean, there's not. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to disband Congress, but let's say the Democrats take the Senate back, you know. And basically, it's just gridlock, just like we have now.
Exactly.
I mean, would he stand for that? Would he Would he say, okay, that's the way, the founding fathers meant it to be, when there's a split in the House and the presidency, the gridlock will happen. And sorry, I guess all those things that I promised you, I'm not going to be able to deliver because that's the way the founding fathers wanted it. He's not going to say that. I mean, he's just going to do whatever he wants because that's what he's done all of his life.
The thing about it, though, is
And
I don't
so
think I don't think. Yes, you may try to do that, but the presidency is not one man, and the executive is not one man. So I think while he may come out with a lot of bluster, he won't do it. And secondly, I'll be frank with you. What I honestly believe is I do believe that Donald Trump has no character. And what I mean by that is I think Donald Trump is being as racist as he needs to be to try to frack the right wing of the right wing to get his portion of the vote. I'll be honest with you. I honestly do not believe Donald Trump is this rabid racist that he comes out that he shows on TV. I could be completely wrong, but I honestly think this is all an act. I think when you have to remember. I remember this. I remember Whoopi Goldberg saying something to the effect of defending him for quite a long time. And I think one of the reasons she was doing that is that she knows him on a personal level. And I think a lot of people know him on a personal level, including quite a few of the politicos there. I'm talking about Black and Hispanic politicos there in New York. And I think while they're repulsed by what he's doing, I think they probably backslap with him and say, "Why are you doing that, man? You know that's not you." I really don't think that's the man. I think this is one of the biggest acts you can find. I mean, if you take a look at the folks that he worked with, what's the woman that he worked with on You're Fired? That was one of the most famous. Omarosa. You know, Omarosa loves the guy. You know, and I don't think Omarosa is some sort of a don't know what she's doing. So I honestly think this is one of the biggest acts that's going on here because he knows that his base is not a very smart base, and that's the only thing that he can do to win. He has no other options.
Isn't it just as bad though if he's pandering to the base? And he is, because when he was saying this stuff about the Bible, that was the ultimate pander. He doesn't know anything about the Bible. His Bible is his ego. That's his Bible.
Well,
he's got the biggest ego in the world.
Not only
so,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, so essentially, if all he's doing is pandering to the base just to so he could get this huge lead that he has, isn't that just as bad?
Yes. It's just as bad. It's just as bad. It is politics. It's bad politics. And I tell you worse, it's interesting that you say that, John, because when you look at Donald Trump, this is a man who supported single-payer health care. This is a man who supported socialized medicine. Again, this is a guy who said all these. I mean, this is a guy that, I wrote a few things that I picked up some videos that he did out there, and this guy's not only didn't have democratic leanings, this guy had liberal democratic leanings. Okay, liberal democratic leanings. And he completely turned around? Come on. He supported a right for a woman to choose. He supported all these things. And so he decided to make that choice. He had to run in the Republican Party. I'm wondering. I mean, I think if he got elected, he'll just give... I'm almost sure that if he gets elected, to some extent, he would give those people that supported him all this time the shaft. Because I really don't think this is who he is. Now, I don't want to go out there and have people believing that, hey, he's kind of okay after all. Because he's not. I don't think he's qualified to be president, in my humble opinion. But I just think that, he is doing exactly what he thinks he needs to do to win a Republican primary, because he knows who his audience is. And the Republican audience that go vote in primaries, sadly, they represent everything that Trump is. They look like Trump. Trump is saying everything they're either ashamed to say. Trump is saying everything that they want to say. Trump is saying everything for them. And that's why they love him so. Right,
but I mean, if you look at, earlier a few months ago, I mean, he was talking about, you know, how he was going to tax his rich hedge fund friends.
Right.
Oh, they're going to get taxed, you know. It's not going to be the same. They're
Exactly.
going to be paying their fair share of taxes. And then he comes out with a plan, and it's one of the worst plans you could possibly have as far as not taxing the rich. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big contradiction. So I mean, this also goes into, you know, he knew the base wouldn't respond to it well,
Right.
and so he basically changed his opinion on
Yes.
it. And so I mean, I see what you're saying. You're saying that he really doesn't have any opinion.
No.
He can just turn on a dime. But at the same time, I mean, he did. I mean, he essentially has been spewing this vitriol
Correct.
for months now,
Mhm.
and I do think he is going to deliver on this. He is going to, you know, I mean, he's very unlikely
He
that he's ever
wins.
going to
Yes.
be
Yes.
elected.
Yes.
But I
Right.
mean, it's terrifying just to think about it. Just to think, I mean, how this guy who really, you know, he has no respect
Right.
for the separation of powers.
Right.
And it's awful. And the other Republican candidates aren't much better. I mean, they may have a little bit more respect for the
Right.
Constitution and the separation of powers, but I mean, their policies and like I said, what Rubio said is just as bad. I mean, saying that, I mean, I just can't believe how that wasn't like one of the biggest stories. I guess maybe because he said it's a Christian broadcasting network, you know, and that didn't kind of get filtered through the mainstream media. I mean, you got Ted Cruz who's supporting, you know, pastors going to their meetings who want to literally
Kill homosexuals.
homosexuals.
Yes.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
You know,
I mean, I just
I'm getting a lot of messages on Periscope that's saying that it is time for us to not necessarily go against Trump, but start getting to his people. Because if you take a look at the people that are supporting this, what does it say about your party? That first of all, Trump has pulled it all the way to the liberal has pulled the Republican Party further right. Think about that. I think it's amusing. If it weren't so sad, it is something we could sit down, have a drink, and just laugh about. But if we don't do something about this, if we don't educate folks, and if we don't remind folks that in effect, you know, we always say this vote is the most important vote of your life. But every 2 years, it's going to be becoming more and more the most important vote of your life. Because at this point in time, there's not much left, John. There's not much left.
Well, I mean, the right's just getting more and more extreme. And before, it was just like, okay, I mean, I guess I just never felt threatened.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Obama was always, you know, I always had in my mind and also in polling data that he would win. He would
Right.
win the second election. He would win the first election. And he did by landslide margins in the electoral
Exactly.
college, which is the only thing that matters. But, you know, now it's not so clear cut. And one other thing I just want to disagree with you a
Sure.
little bit on that you were speaking about is the actual the place in America right now in the world economy. I do feel that you know, Trump always talks about how awful things are in America, and that's one of his, you know, he
Right.
people latch on to that.
Right.
And which is strange because, yes, income inequality has made things very hard for working class and middle class people. They
Right.
haven't been gaining. But, I mean, instead of actually addressing the issues like Bernie Sanders is doing, I mean, he's just demagoguing the situation, and he's saying, I mean, he has no idea what the actual solution is. But I mean, also when he talks about how bad things are in America, they really, I mean, I guess, I mean, I've spoken about this before, but I mean, you know, if you look at the last 3 years, you know, 3 or 4 years, and I mean, again, inequality is awful, and there are lots of issues that we need to improve on. I
Right.
think Bernie Sanders is addressing all of those. But I mean, what is the most important economic issue for everyone? Can they get a job? Can they get a
Right.
job to support themselves and their family? And right now, unemployment is at 5%,
Right.
extremely low. And how often do you hear people talking about that?
Exactly.
Hardly ever. Nobody brings that up. Also, the European economy is in shambles.
Hmm.
The Chinese economy
It's
is
fallen.
not growing
It's
at
in free
near
fall.
the rate.
Yes.
Right. The Brazilian economy is not doing well. The Russian economy is not doing well. We are the only country right now that is doing really well. And how often do you hear that?
And
You
John,
hardly ever hear it.
John, I think it's important what you just said, and I think I tell you something, John. Actually, what you're saying is very important, and let's not call that a disagreement. First of all these other countries are making inroads throughout the world. That's a fact. They are making it. Yeah, Brazil is crashing, making inroads throughout the world. Um, and when I'm saying inroads, it's not necessarily perfect financial inroads, but relationships are being forged between all these different countries, with America not being a part of those relationships being formed. That said, you're absolutely correct, and I think it is all our faults, not yours. Those of us who are writing all these blogs and writing all these articles throughout the country, to not stress that more. I think a lot of times we are worried that we're singing glory, glory, hallelujah, when a lot of people, yes, are working, but they're working for less than they were working for before. But this is all post crash. So we are on the ascent, and things, the expectation is that things will get better, but they are in fact better. And I think you're absolutely correct that we must start stressing that some more. I also think we need to start stressing other issues some more. So I am with you there, and actually I'm going to take that up in new stuff that I'm coming out with, to actually accentuate where we are today relative to where we were and relative to where the rest of the world is. So that is correct, John.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's just not emphasized enough, and I mean, it's just not Trump. It's all of the Republican,
Right.
Candidates. They all talk like America is the ultimate hellhole.
Right.
It really isn't. I mean, America is. I mean, again, Bernie Sanders is addressing the issues, and I mean, Hillary Clinton is to a certain extent. I
Right.
mean, not as well, but I mean, but I mean, it's just very hard to hear this all the time when it really doesn't match with the reality of
Right.
what's going on. I mean, why do you think all the people want to come to America? I mean,
Exactly.
I'm not saying they don't want to come to Europe too, because the European
Right.
economies are better. I mean, all these people risking their lives, in the heart of Africa to come to Europe, why all the Syrian refugees. I
Right.
mean, that's a little bit different.
Well, Europe is easier to
situation,
get
but I
to
mean,
now. It's hard to come across. In fact, in one of the blogs that I wrote that one of the advantages that America has, as far as first of all getting terrorists in, or even refugees in, is that we have two stable countries on our north and south, and we have two huge oceans on our east and west. So how easy is it to get here? No, so it's interesting. Thank you for being with me, and you have a wonderful day, my friend, on Periscope. Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see that that after all of that, that's where we're at, John. Anyway, John, we're at around that time now, so you know what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to give us a closing statement. First, please touch on our subject at hand, which is the terrorist attack against the Planned Parenthood in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and then give me your quick closer.
Okay, well, I mean, it's a simple thing. Is just, I mean, violence is not the answer to any solution. Even if you have a disagreement, let's talk it out, do your protest, but do not insert violence against anybody. That is not acceptable in any form. That should be called terrorism. As far as the political situation, I just again, I hopefully Bernie will will do well in speeches coming up. I know the debate is until a Saturday night on the 19th of December, which is very sad. But I'm just going to keep following him because I do feel that he's the best politician of my lifetime that's ever run for president, and so. I just hope he does well, and I hope he keeps emphasizing the fact that Hillary Clinton wants to send more troops to Iraq, boots on the ground. She said she wouldn't send 100,000, but that means so somewhere between I don't know how many thousand.
She'll send troops. Bottom line, she will send troops.
Me.
Right, exactly.
Right, she will send troops just like all the Republicans, and I hope Bernie keeps emphasizing the differences between that.
Absolutely.
And, between her and that. I just wish she would keep doing that. Also on the Paid Leave Act, Kristen Gillibrand's plan.
Right.
He is talking about that. Hillary said she's not going to sign that. It's a huge mistake. She used to be for single payer in the 90s. Now she's against it.
Exactly.
So these are some big points of contention that hopefully Bernie will bring out, and more people, because we got 9 weeks away before
the first vote. Now, look, thank you very much for calling in as usual, John. You always bring a whole lot of substance to this show. For all the other callers, thank you for being with us. For all my callers on what do you I'll answer this one real quickly. What do you think about another war now against terrorism and the impact on the world's economy? First of all, if we have another war, the impact on America's economy is going to be the same as it was before. First of all, let me tell you, depending on how it's fought and how the products are bought, it could actually be a positive for the U.S. economy a little bit, but it will be a windfall for a very select few, those people of the defense industrial complex. They'll make the killing, the most of the money. But it will increase some employment here in the United States when we're rebuilding all the stuff that we blew up, the ones that are built here in the United States, that is. So I would foresee that a war will have a temporary effect on the economy on the plus side. But where it fails is because what we would be doing is building bullets, bombs, and all these other things which create immediate employment. What we would be lacking is building things of substance that increases the capital flow in the United States proper. Building the roads, keeping the airports up to date, keeping our sewer systems up to date, keeping our water systems up to date. Those will continue to frail, and whenever they start to break, which they have already started to break, it will then have the adverse and negative effect on our economy as we can no longer produce because of an ailing infrastructure. What we do here in America is very short-sighted. We don't look at the big picture. We really wanted to invest and make a lot of money, not only in the short term, but in the long term. We do a hell of a lot of investment in infrastructure because it'll create a ton of jobs. It'll create a lot of circulation of money. It'll increase the economy, and it'll increase productivity because we won't have the traffic jams as we do now. We won't have the traffic jams at airports. We will have good sewer systems. All these things would come to pass. So the answer should always be no to war. We don't need war. We can protect ourselves at home. Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I really cherish the time that you've spent with me. I promise you, for those who follow me, those who advise me, those who, all of you are my advisors on the things that I write, on the things that I post, because
60 seconds.
I have the most intelligent listeners, the most intelligent followers. I learn a lot from I learn a lot from the cloud, you being the cloud. That is how we are going to move this country forward. We are going to move this country forward by us putting our collective brains together and getting things done. No man is an island. No man stands alone. We all stand together. Thank you for listening to Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies. And you know what, folks? I'm out of here. Have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. Muchas gracias por estar conmigo. Adiós.
10.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.